Welcome to the Wellness on Tap podcast with your host, Dr. Debs Eastwood.
Cool. So, ready to roll. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Debbie. Good
it's
morning.
really nice to see you again. We've known each other on and off, probably more off than on, for a few years now.
About
we met through
4 years, 3 years through BNI, through networking.
Yeah, we met through that networking group, and then I got introduced to Tasha and found out a bit more about what you guys do.
Yeah.
So I would really like to explore in a bit more detail, because I've only ever had snippets of things, seen some of your stuff.
Yep.
And really wanted to know more. And what I'd like to really, really find out from you is, what is it that you do and why?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start with what I do.
Fine,
and then we'll
do.
kind of work backwards from there and how I got into it. So I'm a root cause therapist, essentially. So I use analytical hypnotherapy, which is, think of it as the kind of root cause equivalent of hypnosis. So a bit like comparing psychotherapy with counselling. It's all about, where did the original triggers start from that created a fear and a reaction that then is creating the symptoms that hold us back in life. So it's all about releasing those reactions permanently, because everything we struggle with is connected to fight or flight, basically. Whenever we're in any kind of danger, whether it's real or perceived through emotional distress, the body reacts exactly the same way. So in essence, we're just a collection of all these different fear reactions. It's like having a box of tangled cables. With all of those in the house, right? So you pull the big cable you want out of the box and there's 6 of us hanging off it. It's the same with all of our fears and our reactions. You can't just work on one particular thing. You've got to unravel all of these things that just get mixed up over time, essentially. So, so aside of that, I'm a shamanic healer as well. So I'll talk a little bit how I got into that in the story. So that's deep spiritual healing. So shamanic healing for us is a colloquial term for deep spiritual healing, really. And there's a lot of talk of cultural appropriation around it, but it's a term that's used all over the world. I'm told it originates in Siberia. So I got into what I do essentially through struggling with my own mental health. So I actually come from an IT background. So I trained as a software developer originally, and then got into contract project management, a bit of service management, and my last full-time role was managing a software development team for a big healthcare company. So I had a team of 65. And I guess the journey started with, I look back now and think, you would probably describe as a classic midlife crisis mental breakdown, essentially. So back in my earlier 30s, I was just pushing myself really hard in a day job, getting really stressed out all the time. And I recognise now, really, it was imposter syndrome playing out myself with issues that created this need to push myself harder and harder and harder, thinking everybody around me was better than me in some way, thinking I had to work harder than everybody else, thinking I wasn't as good as everybody else. It got to the point where, I was working ridiculous hours, 10 hours, getting up at 5 a.m. I was working in Leeds at the time. So, it's taking me an hour and 20 minutes to get to work. So I'd be in the office at 7:30 a.m, then I'd be staying till late. And that takes its toll.
Definitely
And at
does.
the same time, I was using exercise to cope with that. So my original coping mechanism for my mental health was eating. So I got into exercise as a way to get healthier. But I transferred my coping mechanism to exercise, which started as long distance running, marathons, half marathons. That wasn't enough. Then it was triathlon. Then it was Ironman. It was massive, ridiculous cycling challenges. Because as the stress got higher and higher in the day job, I needed more and more of the coping mechanism.
Of course, that makes sense.
In the same way that people drink more, people take drugs more, people thrill seek. You just need more to counteract it. So, I got to a point literally, I remember the turning point really, it was a very rainy, wet morning. So I'm driving down the M180 in the Doncaster, which is a very quiet motorway. And it was really early in the morning. I just remember thinking, if I just put my car in that ditch, I won't need to go to work. I could have, 6 or 8 weeks off. And I just caught myself and I thought, well, hang on, Chris, that's a little bit dark there. This is getting a bit serious now. It's getting to that point where you're having dark thoughts,
So you
essentially.
had nowhere else to go. You'd pushed yourself exercise-wise to the
that's
limit.
it, exactly. And you know, I'd grown up watching my mum struggle with mental health, and you know, she went to the GP as anybody would, got medication, took loads of time off work, and never really worked through it, and retired early to help herself, but not really let go of the issues. But my brother struggled as well, and you know, he used medication again, and I thought, okay, there must be a solution here. I don't want medication. I don't want time off work. Because of the people-pleasing imposter syndrome, I can't take time off work, right? And
Of course you can't. No, it's acceptable.
And so, like anybody else, Debs, you know, I went to the GP and I said, okay, so this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I'm going through. I don't want medication, thank you very much. I can't take time off work. And the GP looked at me in the eye and said, well, Mr. Marsh, you're not leaving me with many options, are you? And I said, well, there must be something. There must be something. And by then, I was already curious about psychology and how the mind works. I was reading self-help books. I'll come on to that a bit later, but I did the group stress anxiety counselling thing. I'm like, well, I know all this already. This doesn't teach me anything. So I went back to GP. Okay, that's no good for me. I need something else. So, you know, I went to one-to-one counselling. So, you know, I filled out what they call the RCADS form, which is really an assessment of how your mental health is in that moment. So this is something I worked with in my day job. So I recognised it straight away. I was like, I know what you're going to do with this.
Yes.
And I had 6 sessions and it was, right, Chris, thanks very much. If you're still struggling in a year, you can come back. I was like, yeah, but I'm not fixed yet. I'm not fixed yet. Wait,
yeah, we scratched the surface
next?
and
I'm
that's
like,
about it.
Come on, what's going on? So then that moment I thought, right, it's down to me. I'm going to have to sort this out. So I just immersed myself in learning about how the mind works, psychology, reading self-help books. And then I just thought, okay, well, there must be something else I can do. So just thought, well, what were the options? And I had bits of counselling on and off, some private counselling. Talking is great, right? In that moment, you walk out feeling good, you've got stuff off your chest, but then, you know, the next day you're thinking, it's not worked yet. Why has it not worked yet?
Yeah, because you've not addressed what's the cause, I guess.
What's wrong with me? Why does it work for other people, not me? Same way I'd read the self-help books. I'm like, why does this book not work for me? It works for the other million people that bought it. Why does it not work for me? I'm thinking, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with these fixing, right? And then, you know, I just got into the holistic alternative side of things. So, you know, I started going to yoga, the relaxation you have after doing yoga. Is it a vinyasa? I can't remember what they call it.
It's beautiful though, isn't it?
I mean, the first time I experienced that, I was like, oh my God, that's the first time I think I remember being relaxed. So that led me into meditation. So I used a Headspace app to learn how to meditate. That was brilliant. That really, really helped, particularly with the work stress. I used acupuncture, again, fantastic. Felt amazing after that. Then I discovered Reiki. So I went to see a medium, had a reading, noticed he did Reiki. And I thought, tell me about Reiki. I want to know about that. And I could have 2 Reiki sessions for the price of an acupuncture session. So I was like, all right, I'll try this now. Because that was it just switched me off essentially and reset everything. I was like, all right, it's amazing. And that continued really. And that kind of triggered the spiritual awakening side of that. But again, all these things were amazing for the symptoms. But every now and again, I just get yanked back into that stress and anxiety. I was waking up in the middle of the night with panic attacks, thinking the world was going to end, about trivial things that really I knew consciously. This just doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. I woke up in the morning after finally getting back to sleep often thinking, what happened there? Why did I feel like that? What's wrong with me? I can just sort that out now. It's fine. You know, it's not a problem. And this continued really, and I thought, God, there must be something else, and I just continued learning, reading books, and around this time, hypnotherapy just started to appear on my radar. Is probably the best way to describe it. And I thought, I'm curious about that. Okay, and it kept popping up, and one of the people that was a really big influence for me, he probably doesn't realise how much, but there was a gentleman called Ken Ray who's a sports psychologist. So Ken's a career psychotherapist as well. So he works with Premiership football teams. And he did some training for my team in a day job. And essentially I thought, well, okay, Ken's a psychotherapist. Let's have a chat with Ken and see what he recommends. So at the time I was thinking I need to do, a degree or something to get into that kind of side of work and learn about it. And he said, Chris, the one thing that really makes a difference is hypnotherapy. Focus on that. And at the time I was doing NLP training, I was doing coaching training, things like that as well. And he said, that's all great, but hypnotherapy is the thing that really makes a difference. I thought, if a career psychotherapist is saying that, then that is the thing to do.
Yeah, it's got legs, hasn't it?
100%. So not long after that, I met my mentor, John, at a wellbeing event. So the Mind, Body, Spirit shows that we do now. And he was doing a talk on hypnotherapy. And as soon as I walked in the room, I'm like, he's the one. I just knew straight away. I'm like, he's the one that's going to help me. It's definitely. So we did the talk and it was all fantastic. And I went up to him afterwards and said, do you train? Do you train what you do? And he went, yeah. I'm like, sign me up. I mean, sign me up. It was like, oh, the big boy, you know what it is or how much it is. I'm like, no, I know it's you. So this was 2019. So I've been on quite a journey for quite a few years by then. And this was just before lockdown. So I started with the training straight away. But just as I was going to have the therapy, lockdown happened. So we put that off until later in the year. But meanwhile, I was just immersed in the training course, absolutely obsessed with it. I was reading it in the bath, I was reading it in bed, I was reading it on my phone at work.
True passion for it.
100%. It just clicked. It was just like, this is the answer. So when I eventually did the therapy, it was just incredible. It was just such an amazing thing. Hypnosis itself is, in the process I use, it's just a deep state relaxation. We don't take people into the sublimalistic state, the trance state. And again, it was just physically, emotionally incredible. And a lot of the things were coming up. Some of it kind of things I thought, okay, that makes sense. But it helped me realize that all of that people pleasing, all that imposter syndrome was all to do with my low self-worth. And that goes back to my parents getting divorced. It goes back to my relationship with my older brother. It goes back to his struggles with parents getting divorced, my struggles, relationship with my dad thereafter. And then just gets compounded over the years. Now, excuse me. So from that point, I mean, at that time I was just headlong into my career. I think I need to get, recruitment specialists to get up to the director level, trying to find mentors. And partway through the press, just a light went off and I thought, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. Hypnotherapy is where your passion is. Yeah. Just put all of your effort into that. And probably, I don't know, within 6 months when I made that decision in my head, I'd left the day job. And once I was qualified, once I started working with people and got just incredible results right from the first couple of people I worked with. And I just thought, wow, this is powerful stuff. And we're pretty extreme, the first two clients I worked with. And to have somebody with PTSD walk out the door and go, I feel like I can take on the world now, is just the most incredible feeling. I was like, okay, yep, it's time to go. And I got a new boss I didn't get on with. We didn't see eye to eye. So he did me a favour because I left early probably than I planned to at that time. And then just, I was put on garden leave, so I had 4 months full pay. So just absolutely immersed myself into the business. And by the time the money ran out, I was in enough to survive. And I've
you
not
were
looked back since.
Certainly in the right place at the right time, though, weren't you? I mean, it just sounds as though things slotted into place the way they needed to be.
100%.
Which is just wonderful.
And from a spiritual perspective, we look at it from a different angle, like the right people put in front of us, the right people put in our path. And we have to take notice. And I just started taking notice, essentially. And all of that resistance I was getting, all that stress and anxiety I was getting is essentially my body saying, you're in the wrong environment, you're in the wrong place, you're in the wrong relationship. And when I changed that, it was just a huge transformation, on top of the therapy. It was just, when you get up every morning and you just look forward to what you're going to do and you just can't wait to see your clients, you can't wait to see the results, and you can't wait to help them. There's nothing better than that. It's just incredible. But, from that point, the other side of what we're struggling with, unbeknownst to this point, one of my clients was somebody who'd done some training with me in my old job. And she came to me and she what you classically look at as ADHD. 7 businesses, running 1 million miles an hour, really kind of hyper. And she said, Chris, have you ever done a test? I'm like, I haven't, but it's kind of been on my mind and periphery a little bit that, maybe I'm ADHD, but I just thought, not to that kind of level that I'd probably get diagnosis. And she said, I think I might need to do a test. I was like, all right. So I did one. That was very, very strong positive result. So I did another 10 more just to check, as you do. And then went through a more formal route. But for me, that was like a light bulb moment. It was suddenly like, when people talk about the life flashing before their eyes, I had that kind of like, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. All the way.
Clarity.
100%, all the way to my first week of like proper school when I was 5. I remember the teacher gave me a task to do, gave a class task to do. I remember it was a graph, but maybe it can't have been if it was only 5. But she made a big red cross through it and said, that's wrong, do it again. She didn't tell me what I'd done wrong. So I literally did again. I took her literally. And then,
as you would at 5 years old.
Exactly. And then she went berserk at me, made me sit in the corner and put me in detention at 5. The aftermath of watching my mum rip 2 shades of grey out was amusing. But yeah, it just suddenly made sense. Like, yeah, I couldn't understand the instructions. My mind, I don't learn in that same way. So,
for sure.
And at this point, a couple of years into my business, so by then, I probably would say 50% of my clients were ADHD or neurodiverse in some way. And I used to say, Sasha, I'm like, what, is there really this many people in the world with neurodiversity? But of course, like attracts like. So, we feel safe when somebody reacts in any situation how we would do. So, of course, if I'm talking to people with ADHD, talking with people with neurodiversity, I'm reacting how I expect. So, they resonate with me. So it was an obvious then thing to focus on was to focus my therapy around ADHD. And what I've learned through the clients I've worked up to that point was that with neurodiversity, we suffer huge amounts of self-worth trauma, huge amounts of self-love trauma, huge amounts of rejection fear. And there was an article I read recently. It was linked to from a website called AD Attitude. And somebody done a study and worked out that by the age of 10, a neurodiverse child will have had 20,000 more negative feedback experiences than their neurotypical counterparts. And
That's amazing.
How they worked that out was breaking down on a daily basis what you'd expect to get. So it could be you're not listening, you're not paying attention, you're not sitting still, you're not understanding, you're not learning right. My school reports are always, Chris could do better if he applied himself.
Oh yes, I've
Chris
got
is
that
very
t-shirt.
capable if he puts some effort in. I'm like that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So 10,000. Well, suddenly that sounds very realistic. So, and the things that we get told as a child, we tell ourselves as an adult. So if you're always told you're stupid when you're young, you tell yourself you're stupid. If you're always told to be quiet when you're young, you keep quiet when you're an adult. And this is what we work through with the root cause therapy to essentially allow the subconscious mind to figure out for itself, which of all these fear and reactions don't serve a purpose. So to release these negative belief systems and really allow people to step into the power. And one of the challenges with neurodiversity is that school only have one measure of success, right?
They do.
It's read, write, regurgitate. How well you can remember facts and regurgitate them. And if you're not really that kind of learning style, if you're not able to really excel in that kind of context, they ignore the amazing skills that you have. Like with ADHD, we're incredibly creative.
Yes.
We're incredible problem solvers. With neurodiversity, we see things from a different perspective, a different angle. So we're able to find solutions that our neurotypical counterparts just would not find. And we're able to hyper focus on things we're passionate about. We're really motivated by passion. Something's time bound, due tomorrow normally, or it's something competitive, and nothing else. And that's why I just coasted for most of my school life. university life until something really sparked my passion, sparked my interest.
Do you think that's got something to do with why a lot of ADHD, neurodiverse people find themselves in careers that are creative, art, photography, any kind of crafting, whatever it might be?
Yeah, 100%. We just got very creative minds, and because we're not, we don't learn through read, write, regurgitate. We're kinesthetic learners. We learn through doing, trial and error. So that's another side to it. So it's the creativity mixed with the appropriate learning styles, and that's why people who don't succeed academically in the normal measures of success, they find something vocational typically when they go into college. So it could be building trade type stuff, plumbing and things like that. It could be going to arts, going to crafts. It could be going into cooking. I've worked with a lot of chefs who are ADHD. Because that environment suits them. But unfortunately, by then, the damage is already done. They've got that low self-worth, they've got the fear of rejection, they've got the extremity because of those experiences. But it's just not celebrated. Creativity is not really celebrated very much in the school environment. And we're incredible problem solvers being ADHD. And I think that's why I succeeded so well in my career, is that I can think about 12 things at the same time very quickly. Unfortunately, when that's something negative, I spiral out of control very quickly as well. But as a career project manager, it was actually pretty awful at planning. But I was putting all the projects that were failing because I was an incredible problem solver, and I was able to very quickly work out what needed to be done and change stuff. Yes. And of course, I'd buzz on that adrenaline, I'd buzz on that kind of environment. I was the fixer, the problem solver. And software development, particularly in the days I was in, it was all trial and error. There was lots of massive changes in technology and ways of doing stuff. So it suited my learning style, essentially. And that's why, going back to those self-help books, it didn't work for me, but worked through the million people that bought them. It wasn't written for how my mind works. It wasn't written for my physiology. And I don't read books. I listen to them in the car on Audible. Again, it suits my learning style.
Because that suits you better.
Yeah. But unfortunately, society has told me that the measure of success is something different. And obviously now I've learned that actually I recognise what my superpowers are. I recognise what incredible gifts I have, and I focus on those and surround myself with the right people to fill in the gaps. And that's what it takes, I think, a lot of neurodiverse people into their own businesses for two reasons, really. One is just the environment is going to always create some kind of resistance. It's always going to be difficult in some way. It could be as simple as you've got really high energy in the mornings at 7, 6 o'clock in the morning, but you burn out by 11, 12, but you don't start work till 9. It could be that you don't have homework and are flexible working and things like that. But also because you see things from a different perspective, often you're 2 steps ahead of everybody else. And it creates a lot of frustration. And being neurodiverse, typically we don't do the social kind of, how would I describe it? The politics side of the commercial environment. So, you put me in a room with 10 other people in my old job, and there's a problem to solve. My mind's going overdrive. Okay, what are the different permutations of how to fix, how to solve this? What's the different ways we can resolve it? How do we discount the things that aren't going to work? All of the neurotypical people at work, we'll be trying to work out who's the person with the most influence that I need to agree with, essentially. And then by the time I found the problem, okay, this is what we need to do. These are the reasons why. No, Chris, we're going to do this. We're going to do this instead. And no, I've discounted that for these reasons. No, we're just going to do this. And you're thinking, what? Is there something wrong with me? Why couldn't I see that? Hang on, have I made a mistake? Because of all that self-worth trauma.
So again, you're questioning yourself, yeah.
100%. Yeah. And this is what's happened all your life if you're neurodiverse. Even I spoke to a lady a few months ago in a networking one-to-one who's a member of Mensa, and I never really appreciate it. Again, that's another form of neurodiversity. And again, she would say, I was always 10 steps ahead of people. And it would be so frustrating because I couldn't explain, I couldn't articulate why or how I'd come to these conclusions. I just had to step back and wait for them to get there themselves. And I thought, that is very frustrating. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
And again, it's those kind of things I think that take people out of the commercial world and set their own businesses up. Because it just allows you to basically create the right environment for you to thrive in and create the environment where you're the master of your own destiny. Yeah. And of course, you still get all the people pleasing, you still get all of the fear of rejection, fear of failure. So again, a lot of people end up turning a 9 to 5 into a 24/7 because the problem's still there until you get the root cause therapy. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey, really, finding my way there. And
with a few light bulb moments along the way, by the sounds of things, too, in particular.
Absolutely. And it's curious, I started to think, well, I wonder what the real number of neurodiverse people in the world is, the real percentage. Because I meet so many people in my therapy chair that are evidently ADHD. I mean, I never suggest it unless they bring it up. I just talk about their mind works a little bit different to most people's. And they go, yeah, Chris, yeah, you really get me. And I thought, it must be something around kind of 40 to 50%, I think. It must be. Officially, they talk about ADHD being 82, 83% hereditary, but I'm convinced it's 100% hereditary. I mean, I see it in my brother, I see it in my dad. They don't yet. I see it. And I went on a journey this summer with my eldest son who's 17 getting his diagnosis. He just burst in the room one day and said, I need an ADHD diagnosis over summer because that could be the difference in me getting into the right university. I was like, yeah, okay, fine, absolutely. That's your choice. And then I've been able to help him along his journey, understanding how to work with his physiology, how to work with his superpowers and understand himself and find his way of learning. And unfortunately, he chose 3 essay-based subjects at A-level. So, of course, he leaves all of them until Sunday. But helping him find a way to work with that, has been a really interesting journey that, of course, I never had at that age because nobody had any idea. And I'm what you call inattentive ADHD. So, I just switch off when something didn't interest me. I'll be daydreaming, staring at the window. I won't be the disruptive one. So to be able to now support people in that, I see a lot of ADHD coaches out there in the world, and I've read a lot of books that they focus on trying to teach people with neurodiversity how to be neurotypical. Teach them techniques or routines to be productive, act like the norm. But I don't think that's right. That's not the right way to do it. For me, it's about understanding your physiology and working with that, not against it.
That's just more harmonious, isn't it? And it's going to be more fulfilling for your own way of life. Surely you're going to get more out.
Because you're just going to get more and more resistance if you try and force productivity. And I'm a firm believer, the real point of life is about experience. It's about, it's about learning, experiencing. And, when things go bad, we learn more than things go good. You take the lessons from it is really important, of course. And if you look at everything as just experience, good or bad, and it takes you further on your journey, on your path, then you're a little bit more relaxed with stuff. And when you can release all of the fears that no longer serve your purpose, then anxiety, stress, and joy and love and passion are just your navigation system for life. So, anxiety then becomes your body saying, okay, this environment, this situation, this person, this relationship, whatever it might be, is not right for you. Time to go on in your adventure. And if you follow your joy, follow your passion, I don't think you can fail. I genuinely don't think you can fail. And then the wealth you get from your passion is a nice added extra to that if you genuinely enjoy what you're doing and you're passionate about it. And then if you get to the point where you no longer feel that passion, then it's time for a new adventure, essentially.
Absolutely. Do you think that's why people that are described as ADHD or, not neurotypical have lots of different irons and different fires and move from one thing to another?
Yeah, absolutely.
Without realising if they don't know.
Yeah. And I think the cautionary thing I work with my clients around is that you're going to have loads of ideas. You're going to constantly have different things you want to do. And it's about doing it at the right time. So I've learned to use mind maps a lot. So I have lots of ideas for the business. I have lots of ideas for what I'm doing in the future. And in my early business life, I would try and do everything.
Yeah.
And of course you can't. I thought I could, but you can't. So, I just dump all my ideas in mind maps. It just logically works for how my mind processes information. And by just getting it out of my head onto paper, so to speak, I use digital ones, but it allows me to park it and my mind to go on to the next thing. So it's little things like that then once I've got that information documented, my mind can go into other things. But then at the right time, suddenly it just come back into my existence again.
Yeah.
And I go, now it's time to do that thing. Now it's time to bring the business coaching into what I do.
For sure.
Now it's time to combine the hypnotherapy training with the business coaching. And I'm like, okay, all right, okay,
yes.
yeah. And suddenly, then people start asking for it, and then like, okay, it's definitely now the right time there.
Yeah.
And it's learning to then kind of go with the flow of things a little bit.
I don't know why, but the analogy of a chef just popped into my head then. It's like the mind maps are doing all the prep beforehand.
Yeah.
And then you put the right things in the right time in the recipe.
That's it. And a chef is a good example where you've got to create new menus, you've got to create new dishes, you've got to have that creativity. But that creativity needs to be sparked, essentially. So I'm a big fan. There's a guy called Rory Sutherland who's a big marketing exec guy. And he did a video I watched on TikTok. He was talking about the difference between a creative mind and a non-creative mind. Really, he was talking about ADHD without realizing it. So you give a neurotypical person 4 weeks to do a task. They'll diligently work through that task until the deadline. You give somebody with ADHD that task. They'll wait for inspiration to hit. They'll sit on it. They'll mull it over. They'll sit in the back of their subconscious. And at some point, a bulb will go off and they'll go, right, this is what I'm going to do. But they will come up with a more creative solution than their neurotypical counterparts, essentially. And of course, we're just conditioned to think that's not the right way to do it. You have to diligently plan. You have to work through stuff. Me too, in my career, that was what I've been brainwashed in.
We get it from school, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. And, I used to beat myself up for leaving things to last minute thinking, oh, God, why didn't you do it earlier? I just couldn't sit down, or when I did try to do it, I won't be happy with what I'd done. But then when inspiration hits, then suddenly I can hyper-focus on something really quickly and achieve great things. Now, if I do the same thing, if I'm doing a presentation in 4 weeks for an event, I just wait. I don't get stressed about it. And I know that worst case scenario, I'll do it last minute and it'll be great quality. I'll be happy with it. I'll just wait for inspiration. I'll think about it. I'll mull it over. I might make some notes in my mind maps or something else. And at the right time, it'll just come flooding out. I've even written presentations on the morning before the lunchtime I'm going to do it. But don't get stressed about it anymore. And this is working with my son. It's like these essays you need to do that you'll always leave till Sunday. That's fine. But make sure you understand what you need to do. As soon as it's set, read what you need to do. Understand what the question is. And it'll just sit in your subconscious. And he's learned that that's the way it enables him to hyper-focus on a Sunday when he feels
Amazing.
like it.
Yeah, when the flow's right.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's just pushing against this social conditioning that we've been given.
Which is huge, isn't it? It's everywhere. It's all around us.
Yeah, absolutely. In every walk of life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's learning to navigate the world in a way that suits you, creating the right environment for you to thrive in, essentially. And by, again, releasing all those subconscious belief systems that don't suit you, releasing all those fear and reactions that are holding you back, and suddenly you can step into being your authentic self. You can be weird and wacky and wonderful in your own way and not have that fear of rejection, not care what anybody thinks, not have that self-worth, that fear of judgment. And that's where you can really excel in. You can really allow yourself to flow with life.
Which is wonderful. That's what we should all be doing, isn't it? We should all be our individual, authentic selves.
Absolutely.
I wonder how many of us aren't.
And lots, I do think, and I started to think about this, and I've started to try and draw what being neurotypical and neurodiverse means, and because it's not a spectrum, it's a palette. I think I like to think of it as palette. So we have a little bit of red, a little bit of blue, a lot of green, a huge amount of yellow, barely any purple, maybe, and that's what makes up how our minds work. And for neurodiverse people, we're just on the edge of this scale. So like neurotypical is this band in the middle. It's like we're somewhere in this band. Maybe you've got ADHD on one side, autism on the other side. So maybe it's better as a donut because they do overlap. Maybe it's a donut. That's what I need to draw it as. So people will say, well, isn't everybody on the spectrum somewhere? Yes, I do agree with that. But you've got to be careful of saying that because it minimises people's experiences who are on the edges of that scale, if you like. But I think there's no such thing as neurotypical. It's just a scale of diverse thinking. And processing, essentially. And I think that's what really we need to get better understanding of, a better visibility of. And again, recognise that everybody's squeezed into this little square box of how we should live our lives, how we should think, how we should behave, how we should react, because that's what school is designed to do, essentially create workers. And if you're neurodiverse, it's just that box is smaller, tighter, creates much more resistance.
Friction.
Exactly. And that's what then creates the stress and anxiety, essentially, because the environment is creating that resistance. So, So it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey to get there. And I'm really excited now about taking these new ways of thinking, taking this new knowledge. And the more I work with neurodiverse clients, the better I understand the different types of neurodiversity and how I can help them and help people just step into living life their authentic way, essentially.
I absolutely love that. So do you do most of your work face-to-face or is it doable online? Or
Yeah, mixture, yeah. So, essentially with what I do, I'm just using my voice. We're just talking. So, if you think of hypnosis as just deep state relaxation, as long as your environment is relaxing, if home is part of your trauma, then you might struggle to relax, if you've got an abusive partner who might be around.
Makes sense.
But I've worked with clients in Japan, in California, lots in London and South as well, just from my old career. Obviously, you build lots of connections all over. And I've had wonderful, wonderful results online as well. Face-to-face is nice.
Of course.
I can put people on a lovely, comfortable chair.
There we go,
and create that beautiful environment. But yeah, it's great to be able to work online now. And of course, COVID created that way of working for us.
It just opened the door to familiarity with being online, didn't it?
Yeah.
Which we just didn't have before. I mean, things like Skype calls were common, weren't they? And you don't hear of those anymore, do you?
No. Occasionally I reboot my computer and Skype pops out of the blue. I'm like, oh, where have you been? It's all Zoom and Google Meet and Teams now.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. When I was still in the day job in lockdown, so I'm managing a team of 65 over Teams. And I'm very animated when I talk, I use my hands a lot, I'm quite visual. So I struggled a little bit when I'm like, I can't see people's hands. I like to see the body language. So I'd experiment with like moving cameras around so I knew people could see my arms and making sure that my arms are in camera when I'm talking because, it varies what people think, but I think somewhere between 15 to 30% is what people say is the verbal part of communication. I think that's 70, 80% is the body language,
at
the
least,
eye contact, the hand motions, the inclination of voice, all that kind of stuff. So all of that is massively important. So again, I'm very conscious when I do therapy online that people can see the full of me.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. I mean, I've heard even less figures than that it's down in like single figures almost.
Yeah.
The amount of the actual content that's relevant.
Yeah.
Which is quite scary, really, isn't it? Because we think hard about what we're going to say and try and make sure the right things come out, especially when you're being recorded.
100%. So yeah, it's been great actually to be able to do that, and of course it opens up your client base as well.
Sure. So a lot of your clients are ADHD, even if they identify with that or not, you can see that in them.
Yeah. As I said, I think it's just because you expect people to react how you would do. So when I'm having conversations, when I'm making sales conversations, when I'm networking, of course I'm going to attract that mindset. And I've grown up around, neurodiversity, autism as well. So I've always had a very good understanding of it. So, and again, my learning comes from experience, not from a textbook. And I think, again, that's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
And particularly with autism, there's such a variety of behavior patterns. The different elements of how our mind works, how we process emotions, can be wildly different between two people with very, very similar traditional diagnosis around autism. So again, it's all about using those active listening techniques, using the right questioning, using the right interaction to make people feel safe, essentially, and understand what their problems are and understand what they're going through, to be able to connect and show empathy, which is another very strong trait of ADHD, by the way. We're very sensitive, very empathetic. So it's creating just that feeling of safety.
For sure.
Because if you're going to talk about the deepest, darkest experiences you've ever had, you need to feel safe. You need to feel comfortable with people.
You do. Do you find you actually have to talk about the experiences or just about the feelings around it?
Well, this is the interesting thing about the way I work with hypnosis. The subconscious records everything that's ever happened to us. It's all in there. We just need to put the body in the right state and ask it the right questions to surface what we need. So, essentially the process I use, the subconscious is doing the work for us. I guide it through a process. I help people understand consciously the connections and how and why these things affect them. But we'll learn the subconscious process, and it knows what it needs to go back to. So we literally just prompt it to find these root causes. But it has the ability to show you exactly what you need in a certain situation to be able to release it. So for some people who've had really awful things happen, they might just need to see enough to know that connects to this experience you have now. And that's it. Some people need to know more detail. They need to know why did that happen? What created that situation? How did I get in that situation? How come I couldn't get out of it? How come nobody else saw what was going on? So they see much more detail. So you get what you need. Not necessarily what you want, but you get what you need, essentially. And I always say to clients, look, important. Some big stuff's going to come up here, but it's stuck in the body. And when emotion and trauma get stuck in the body, it creates physical elements. It can create fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, ME, all stress conditions, IBS, stress condition. That's your body diverting blood flow from areas it doesn't need in a short period of danger. So digestion and stomach are the first things that suffer. And people I've worked with have had chronic hip pains that have been connected to the grief of losing a close family member, back pains, shoulder issues, weight of the world and shoulder. I had torn rotator cuff from the triathlon. And swimming, curious, my brother had the same issue. He blamed rugby. My mum had the same issue. She blamed typing. But it's the tension in the neck and into the shoulder blades, the lats, everything pulling your physiology into the wrong place. So once I release the emotional start point of that, then I could actually resolve the physical very quickly.
Which is fabulous.
And you've got to look at the body holistically, and this is what mainstream medical don't do. They compartmentalize everything. And there's a specialist for this, specialist for this, specialist for this. Very rarely do they all get in the same room to talk about patient, But I see it as like a triangle of healing. Tasha and I work on the emotional and energetic, but the physical can get to a point where it needs physical intervention as well.
Yeah.
But once you release the emotional and energetic start points of that, then the physical will resolve itself very quickly. And that could be as simple as, digestion. And bowel, stomach issues. Because if you're constantly in fight or flight, blood's been diverted from a digestive system, then it's going to throw out all your gut biome, it's going to create leaky gut.
Absolutely, you're going to have problems, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's a great example of resolving the emotional start point, then the physical can have the space to recover. I mean, I'm a firm believer that the body is capable of healing itself from anything, given the right circumstances and environment. And that's my latest passion, is learning about plant medicines and alternative medicines, and going back to the old way of healing.
Oh, wonderful. You're singing my song.
Using plants, using herbs. So we're very deep in alternative medicines and tinctures and all that kind of stuff at the moment. So that's quite a new thing for me. So I'm still learning.
Maybe we'll explore that another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there, finally, the last sort of point, any succinct message that you would like to get across?
A succinct message. I think that the key thing for me that I say to every client is going back to what I said earlier about, the purpose of life for me is finding fulfillment. It's finding your passion. And the things that give you joy, that's your body going, that's the thing you need to do. That's the thing you need to focus on. And I'm sure you've experienced this with your changing careers and the many things you've done. I tried to set up lots of companies when I was younger, but they were all IT focused. I didn't have any passion for it. So I just couldn't push myself to do it. I felt like I should do, I wanted to, but I just couldn't. But when you find that thing you're passionate about and you put all your energy into it, that's where everything becomes easy. That's when life becomes synchronous. I mean, don't get me wrong, having your own business, being a therapist, you've still got to do your accounts, you've still got to sell, you've still got to chase people, you've still got to ring people, you've still got to network, which I do love. And it comes with its own stress and pressures, but the rest of it is just incredible because I get up every day doing the thing I'm passionate about. And I love talking about what I'm passionate about as well. The key thing is follow your passion, follow your joy. That's the number one thing I recommend.
What a perfect sentiment to end on. Thank you so much, Chris.
Brilliant,
I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.